Well, I think my wrench is now a permanent part of my car. Race start. Yeah. Oh, crap. All right, guys, we're back in the shop to finish up the E63 so I can actually drive it. So you saw in one of my previous videos, I discovered that there is oil leaking from one of my cam sensors into my harness. But we did find it way early. It hasn't gone anywhere near the ECU yet, and it didn't look like any of the other sensors were leaking yet. But as a precautionary, we're going to be replacing all 4 cam sensors and 2 magnets. So this is a common issue in the M157 and a lot of other Mercedes. If you don't catch it early, these things can basically leak oil into the harness and it wicks all the way up to the ECU. And if you don't catch it early, it can cost $1,000 in repair. So to catch it early is only $35. So yes, unfortunately, this is part of owning a Mercedes, but I will take this any day over having to replace my rod bearings every oil change like if I owned a BMW. But before we begin, so when I found this out, I actually talked to one of my friends that is a Mercedes tech, and he told me it's typically the cam system. And he told me that there is one other thing that you need to check on an M157. And to check for that is pretty easy. On the back of your cylinder head, there is a vacuum pump. That vacuum pump can leak oil into this line, which will mess up this solenoid. This solenoid is actually what controls your boost, because these lines run directly down to your turbos. So that's just a good thing to check. Make sure there's no oil in this, otherwise you might need a new vacuum pump. But mine, totally dry. So when oil leaks into that, it messes up that solenoid, which will cause an underboost situation, and your car might not be as fast. Luckily, I don't think it'll actually destroy anything other than that solenoid, but still, that is something you need to check. Anyway, so back to the sensors. I opted to do all 4 cam sensors. I did only buy 2 magnets, and there's a reason behind that. A, none of my magnets are really leaking. And B, while some of these magnets are only going to take less than 5 minutes to swap out, there are several that will take several hours to swap out. And so because I'm doing this precautionary, that's not worth it to me right now. I'd rather just check them and actually replace them when I first see oil. So anyway, let's go ahead and get to work so I can get her back on the road. So the first thing I want to do after all the sensors are unplugged is go ahead and just kind of put some towels all along here, because we're going to spray some and get all over the place. So we're going to be using just electronics cleaner. You can pick this up at an auto parts store for like 12 bucks or on Amazon for like 5. So buy it from Amazon. Simply, we're just going to clean them up real good. Maybe do it once or twice until you can see that there's no oil in there. I mean, obviously, if there's not a new source of oil, I don't think it's going to continue its wick, but that's just my opinion. Now, literally, this is a pretty easy job. So to get the cam sensor off, you do need a T30, easiest on a 1/4 inch ratchet. Pop it loose. Don't drop it. Now we're just going to wiggle it out. See if we can actually see. So yeah, you can see in this one, looks like it's leaking oil from the side, because the other one I took out did not have any evidence of this. For example, here's one from the other side. Little shiny, pretty dull. Shiny, dull. So the new sensors, like I said, they're only 35 bucks each from where I bought them. They actually already come with an O-ring, so you don't need to replace it. Just make sure it seats nicely. So it's already got a little oil in there. So, I mean, typically they're just going to slide right back in there. Just snug it back up, and that's done. That guy looks pretty dry. Now that this side's done, we can move over to the other side, and I'll show you the one little trick on that one. Here on the driver's side, there is this bracket that you got to get out of the way first. So we're just going to loosen him up. And that'll give us plenty of room to reach the T30. It's really just never a good idea to be bending, plastic lines, especially vacuum lines. Brand new one goes in. Now with the magnets, there's actually 4 of them. You got 2 here and you got 2 here. This one's easy. It's going to take you like 10 seconds to do. This one's hard. this one's hard, and this one's impossible. So I'm not going to be doing the impossible one. We're just going to clean that up and keep washing it, make sure it never leaks oil. We're going to be doing the two hard ones in this because to try to see if we can do that without having to remove any oil filter parts and without having to remove the charge pipe, because that is a very hard piece to remove. Anyway, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is when we pull this off, there might be a little bit of sand everywhere, so I just got some compressed air. Now that the area is clean, I'm just going to use an 8mm gear wrench. And remember, these bolts are aluminum into aluminum. They are not very strong, so we want to be gentle with them, especially when we retighten them. And the other thing is, obviously, just make sure you don't drop anything. So use some positive bolt control here. So they come out pretty easily. All right, so obviously I have this last bolt there. I can't get it from the back side, and there's a good chance that it's gonna fall. So we have two options. I can remove the charge pipe, or I'm gonna try this first. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna stuff a rag in here, and the bolt theoretically cannot fall. Might be a little tricky to get back in, but I've done trickier. Okay, now we can just pop him off like we slide him out. Carefully make sure no dirt falls in there. Here's the part number of the magnet I used. I usually call these camshaft solenoids. I call them magnets. So they already have an O-ring on them, and literally this is how you install them. All right, and that third one, I'm going to use this to get it into place. And then I'll definitely remind you again that, remember, these are aluminum bolts. You cannot put the same kind of snugness you would on a steel bolt. So just go until they get, you feel the resistance of them bottoming out, and then maybe just go a tiny bit more. And that's really all you got to do. I do want to see if I can get this furthest to the right one. Move these wires around just to get a little bit more slack. All right, well, I think I'm learning a little lesson here. We now can't get our tool out. This would have been bad to get the tool stuck on there. It looks like I stopped loosening just in time. All right, we'll learn as you go. I almost got my tool stuck by over loosening this thing on a non-reversible gear wrench. So luckily I was able to get the gear wrench off enough that I can retighten this with a pick as I get enough room to get him out. So note to self, you can only back it out just a little bit. Then you got to do the rest by hand. I'm free. Okay. So we'll try to get this out by hand. See if there's enough room. Okay, so yes, you can get this bolt out. So now with all three bolts undone, let's see if we can get this guy out. All right, so it is possible. So I just kind of compared the new and the old. While they have the exact same part number, if you look inside them, I would say the old one has what appears to be bubbles inside the the potting that they did. Well, the new one, on the other hand, doesn't have any. So it's possible that just these were a bad batch, and even though they have the same part number, they've been revised. All right, so now we're going to reinstall it. Carefully slip it down past the harness. All right, so now this is going to be probably the tricky part, getting these in there without dropping them. So probably not going to be able to see it because I'm using two hands. Well, while tricky, this one is doable. The problem with this guy over here is you see that the magnet is nearly touching these oil lines. So I don't think these oil lines move. Even if you remove this top one, it's still going to touch the bottom one. So this guy, I don't think he's going to come out unless we have to do a tensioner. Now with everything cleaned and replaced, we can just start clicking all these sensors back into place. Finally, guys, after what seems like a month, we're finally able to drive this thing without knowing that we're destroying the harness or ECU, and it feels so good. Love this car. All right, so now we're fully up to temp. Time to do our first race start. So let's do this. Park, race start, paddle up. Oh crap. What was, no. That was the sound, positive, that was the sound of a broken motor mount. Dang it, can't win with this car. Well, at least you guys know what the next video is gonna be, right?